The millionaire disguised himself as a beggar to test her goodness, and what happened next shocked them both. Anna always thought that her life should have been different. In her dreams, she envisioned herself as a successful woman sitting in a luxurious cafe overlooking the city, where her attention is drawn only to important negotiations, not to the cups of coffee she serves with a smile. She often envisioned herself in the most fashionable outfits, with no extra worries about how to pay the rent on her apartment or buy medicine for her ailing father. But the reality was different. The Black Star was a place Anna knew by heart. It was her refuge, although in reality here she could only exist, not live. The walls of the cafe were decorated with dark wood. The air was permeated with the smell of freshly brewed coffee and cigarette smoke. The sounds of chatter and clinking glasses created a unique atmosphere, and the music in the corner, not too loud, not too quiet, gave the place a slight but mysterious aura. It wasn't as quiet or as fun as other cafes in the city, but Black Star attracted its audience. Some people were looking for relaxation, some were looking for a cozy atmosphere, and some were looking for a hidden party. Anna, on the other hand, came here every day, earning money that barely covered her needs. She worked as a waitress, and even though her customers weren't the biggest party people in town, she could still hear their conversations. Other people's lives passed before her eyes. Anna noticed the rich men sitting at their tables, devouring extravagant meals and talking about the stocks that brought them millions, the gleam in the women's eyes of desire to get their hands on it all. She was forever imagining how great it would be to be just like them, oblivious to everything that was going on outside their world. Anna tried not to think about the fact that her life was blocked in this place. She worked several shifts a day, cleaning daily, serving meals, and cleaning the capitals of the traces of luxury she longed for. But this life gave her more than frustrations. There were moments here, in this cafe, when she felt alive. When she could be useful, when her smile elicited reciprocating looks of gratitude. And in those moments, she would lift her head, ready to believe that she could reclaim those golden days that had once been a part of her life. That was her promise. Someday she would regain everything she had lost. But not with someone else's help, but with her own labor. It was important to her. The mysterious figure that entered the cafe this evening caught her attention. Victor entered quietly, seeming to overshadow the entire atmosphere. His worn jeans, worn boots, and dirty jacket contrasted sharply with the elegant interior of the Black Star. Severely out of place, he didn't look like the kind of person one would meet here. None of the visitors paid much attention to him, however, and that was his plan. Victor was a billionaire, but today he decided to leave his luxury and role as a successful businessman behind. He wanted to experience something different. He wanted to see the world from a different perspective, through the eyes of a man who was fighting for survival, not profit. He didn't realize it himself, but he needed to test more than just social interaction. He wanted to know how those at the other end of the social ladder felt. He decided to test their reactions, to see the world without blind prejudice and through the mask of poverty. Victor walked over to the table where Anna was sitting and asked for a cup of coffee. She didn't ask any questions, didn't try to study his face, as she would do with every visitor who came here in his best clothes. She simply served the order, ignoring his strange appearance. It was professional. But her internal reaction was different. Who was he? Why had he come here? He clearly wasn't part of this world, but what did he have to gain from being in this cafe? These questions tormented her, but she kept working anyway, avoiding looking at him for longer than necessary. Victor noticed this. He sensed her wariness, but along with it he felt some kind of attraction emanating from her. He probably didn't even realize how different she was from all the other people he'd met. Anna didn't try to be nice just for the sake of a tip. She was sincere, and that seemed incredibly strange to him. When she returned with a cup of coffee, he said his pleasure and thanked her for her help. He tried to read her gaze, trying to catch even small signs of interest or sympathy. But his mask hid his real intentions. He couldn't allow himself to reveal himself, for that might upset his plans. Anna felt her heart clench. There was something in his eyes that she couldn't immediately explain. He wasn't an ordinary homeless man, as he might have seemed at first glance. He was a secretive, withdrawn man, but his eyes spoke of something more. Anna could tell that she saw both fear and something more behind that look, a hunger for recognition, a desire to be understood. She caught herself thinking that she wasn't so indifferent to this man. "You're not from around here?" she asked, squinting a little, trying to get a sense of his background. Victor smiled slightly, not expecting such a question. "No," he replied. "I'm just looking for a place to hide for a while. I like this place. It's quiet." Anna nodded, pretending to accept his words without question. Inside, however, she kept feeling a strange vagueness that just wouldn't go away. She tried to convince herself that it didn't matter, that it was just another strange day in her life. But this meeting was far different from all the others. Victor came to the Black Star again a few days later. This time his clothes were the same as the first time, a dirty jacket, worn boots, his hair slightly sloppily combed. But if last time he was just the odd man out among the crowd, now his presence was more palpable. He still didn't stand out outwardly, but his very look, and especially his demeanor, were beginning to attract attention. Especially Anna's attention. She noticed him as soon as he entered. He didn't say anything, just walked over to his favorite table in the corner of the cafe. Anna automatically approached him, but this time, feeling a certain wariness, she decided to spend this moment with special attention. She tried not to show anything extra, but her heart was beating a little faster than usual. She noticed his eyes studying her, and noticed how he avoided a direct gaze, as if he wanted to remain invisible to others. When he smiled demurely and asked for a cup of coffee, Anna slowed down a little. The answer was almost automatic, but there were questions swirling around in her head. Why had he come again? What does he want from her? Why did he keep hiding his real identity? "Still the same coffee?" she asked, avoiding a direct look. Her voice was calm, but there was tension in it. "Yes, the same," he answered, looking at her with mild interest. Anna turned to the bar and noticed that her hand was shaking slightly as she poured the coffee. It wasn't from fatigue or cold. No, it was a reaction to his presence, to his gaze. That look seemed to penetrate her, making her feel like he was hiding something, something important, elusive. He continued to sit at his desk, occasionally lifting his eyes and meeting her gaze. Anna, trying to ignore it, continued to work, but her thoughts kept returning to this man. He seemed different to her from all the others, different from those who usually came here. He was different, and that feeling wouldn't let her go. Why had he come back? Why? Was it an accident? She kept running these questions through her head, trying to find an answer. But the more she thought, the more confused she became. Victor watched her while she worked. He knew he was attracting her attention, but he tried not to show it. He even tried to act as if he were just another customer who had accidentally walked into the cafe. But in reality, things were far from casual. He knew for a fact that she would be working that day. And he knew that she would probably pay attention to him. Something about her presence made him uneasy. He hadn't come here just to hang out with regular people. He had come to understand something about himself, to feel something that was missing in his life. But most importantly, he wanted to understand his feelings. Why was he attracted to this woman? What in her gaze, in her calmness, in her confidence had touched him so strongly? Victor sat at the table, oblivious to everything that was going on around him. He tried to understand what was happening to him. Why, despite his wealth and success, was it so hard for him to leave his world behind and accept her, a simple woman who worked in a cafe? He was used to attention, to people seeking his company, succumbing to his charming looks and status. And now he was trying to hide his identity, trying to be invisible, and it was strange to him. He understood that his behavior was not in line with his inner beliefs. He couldn't understand why his behavior affected Anna so much. After all, she was an ordinary girl who had nothing to do with his world. But he sensed something in her gaze that could not be described in words. She didn't pity him, didn't look at him with pity as others did. And that stirred him. On the second day, when Victor came to the cafe again, he felt he couldn't escape her. He noticed the way her gaze stopped on him, the way she held her breath for a moment as he looked up and caught her gaze. He noticed how she restrained herself when she found it hard not to react to his presence. He could sense that she suspected something, and it was adding tension to their relationship. Anna could no longer avoid thinking about him. Every day when she handed him a cup of coffee, she felt his presence, as if his attention was always one step ahead of her. She couldn't shake the feeling that Victor was hiding something. Everything seemed too drawn out, too wrong. Her intuition told her that there was something wrong with this man. Anna felt that his behavior was unnatural. He came back too often, tried too hard not to stand out, and it was all somewhat manipulative. He was making her doubt herself, making her feel that he was attracted to her, not as a waitress, but as something more. That afternoon, when he came to the cafe again, Anna felt her heart start to beat faster. She couldn't ignore it. Why did she feel like Victor was part of something more than just a strange visitor? Why couldn't she just serve coffee and forget about him like she did the other visitors? She walked over to the table where Victor was sitting and handed him a cup. His stare, without realizing it, made her freeze. He was hiding something again. Anna felt she had to pull away from him. This wasn't just a job, not just a commitment. She felt his attention was manipulation. He wasn't looking for simple companionship. He was looking for something deeper. At that moment, Anna realized she couldn't continue this game any longer. She decided to distance herself from him. That look, those questions that wouldn't let her go, had to go. She could no longer afford to let him affect her feelings. Though her heart continued to beat faster at the thought of him, she knew it wasn't sincere. Victor appeared at the cafe the next day, as always, in his inconspicuous clothes, but today he could no longer hide his intention. Anna noticed him at once. He was sitting in the same corner as before, but this time his gaze was intense, almost determined. Her heart clenched. She knew something was going to happen. When she approached his desk with a cup of coffee, he didn't wait as he usually did and spoke at once. "Anna, I need to talk to you." His voice was calm, but there was a slight anxiety in it. "I know you already suspect something. I can't hide the truth any longer." Anna froze. She felt her chest tighten, the inner tension weighing down on her. She knew this was coming, but she still wasn't ready for a confession. "What do you want to say?" she asked, trying to remain calm. She set the cup down in front of him, but she couldn't look away herself. Victor took a deep breath before continuing. His eyes looked at her sincerely, but there was some fog in that look that made it difficult to understand his motives. "I am not what you thought I was. I am not a poor man," he said. "I'm Victor, a millionaire, and I came here to understand what really lurks in people. I wanted to see how you'd feel about me if I was just a regular person. If I was just a nobody." Anna felt the ground go from under her feet. All her doubts, all her suspicions that she had ignored for so long, suddenly became reality. He wasn't just a strange visitor. He was a man who was playing with her feelings, manipulating her for some game of his own. How could she not have noticed this before? She took a step back, her gaze cold and detached. You've been playing me this whole time?" Her voice shook, but she tried to hold it together. Why didn't you tell me the truth right away? Why didn't you let me see you for who you are?" Victor lowered his head as if ashamed of his actions. "I wanted to know what you saw in me when I didn't hide my wealth. I wanted to see if you would treat me the way you treat others if you didn't know who I really am. I thought that if I was an ordinary person, you would see my real personality." Anna felt her heart bursting with pain. She couldn't hide her feelings anymore. Everything she thought about him was shattered. She couldn't believe that he had used her so shamelessly. "It was despicable, Victor," she whispered, feeling her throat constrict. "You made me believe in something that didn't exist. You played with my feelings to test your theory. Did you think I would just play by your rules like everyone else?" Victor remained silent. He knew he couldn't justify himself. He knew what he had done was wrong, but he was too proud to admit it. "You shouldn't have done that," Anna continued, her eyes filled with tears, but she held back, trying not to show her weakness. "Did you think I would be satisfied with your attention just because you were rich? I don't need your money, Victor. I don't need your games." Victor raised his eyes and met her gaze. He saw her face contort in pain. He realized that he had lost her, that what they could have built had been destroyed by his own hands. "Forgive me," he said quietly, but Anna couldn't believe the words. "How can you forgive someone who has deceived you for so long? How can you forgive someone who manipulated your feelings for his own game?" Anna couldn't answer. Instead, she turned around and walked away. She couldn't stay by his side any longer. Everything inside her was screaming in pain. She didn't understand how she should be. She felt betrayed, used. She couldn't forgive him. As soon as she left the cafe, she ran into a man she didn't expect to see at all. Leonid appeared right in front of her. He was dressed in a strict suit, with a smile on his face, but his eyes were full of firm determination. Anna didn't know what he wanted from her. "Anna, I know you don't understand what's going on, but you need to hear it from me," Leonid said, trying to stop her. "What do you want?" Her voice was harsh. She felt her inner world crumbling and her patience was running out. "Victor," Leonid began, his voice low and serious. "He's using you. He's been using you from the beginning. Do you understand that? He came here to test you, to manipulate your feelings. He's not who he says he is. He's been playing you this whole time without you noticing." Anna froze. Leonid's words cut her like a knife. She realized he might be right, but it didn't help her. She felt her inner world crumbling even more, and it wasn't clear to her who she was now, if she could trust anyone at all. "I know it's hard to understand, but you need to stop believing him," Leonid continued. "He's a manipulator, and everything he does is a game for his own pleasure." Anna felt her inner world explode. Everything she thought about Victor, everything she wanted to believe, turned out to be a lie. Her trust had been completely shattered, and she didn't know what to do now. I don't know who to believe," she whispered, feeling the tears come to her eyes. "I don't know how I feel. I don't know who I can trust." Leonid took her hand and tried to comfort her, but her soul was far from finding solace. Everything she had once thought about people now seemed false. There was no more room for trust in her world. She walked away, leaving Leonid standing at a loss. Her world was shattered, and she knew she needed time to sort herself out now. Her soul was devastated, and she realized that all she needed now was time. Time to figure out how she felt, time to figure out what she wanted out of life, and most importantly time to learn to trust again. But right now, she wasn't ready. She was broken, and she didn't know how to rebuild her feelings. After Anna left the cafe that evening, her life seemed even more unpredictable and confusing. She walked the streets of the city, not knowing where to go, not realizing what she should do now. Her feelings were overwhelmed: betrayal, disappointment, confusion. But one thought never left her: she needed to sort herself out. She could no longer allow herself to be trapped by other people's manipulations, games, and promises. She needed to find her way, to figure out who she really was and what she wanted out of life. Days turned into weeks. Anna continued to work at the cafe, but her outlook on everything around her had changed. She was no longer someone who ignored her inner desires in order to please those around her. She began to listen to herself, to her needs, to her doubts. Every morning she woke up with the thought that she had to make a change. And so she began to search. Searching for meaning, searching for her power, her place in the world. She thought a lot about Victor. He was part of her life, part of her memories, and even though she felt anger and disappointment toward him, there was still room in her heart for questions. Why had he done this? What made him hide his true identity, manipulate her feelings? Why couldn't she still forget him? At some point she realized that she didn't want to live in these questions and doubts anymore. She needed to find her own answer. Not for him, not for anyone else, but for herself. Anna made a decision. She had to regain her inner strength and learn to trust. But not with money, not with other people's words and promises, but with herself. She decided not to let anyone else into her life who would try to manipulate her. She would move forward without looking back, without letting the past control her future. But as soon as she made that decision, Victor reappeared in her life. He wasn't the same as before. He came to the cafe without hiding his true identity. He didn't come as a homeless man, but as Victor, the man he really was. "Anna, I need to talk to you." His voice sounded firm and sincere. She couldn't avoid this conversation. She didn't know how she felt, but she needed to give herself a chance. A chance to sort out what she felt for this man, what she thought was true and right. Anna looked up and he was already sitting at a table in the corner of the cafe, looking at her. His gaze was full of worry and some kind of confusion. He wasn't sure if she was ready to listen to him, but he knew he had to tell her everything. "You didn't come as the man I knew," Anna said, trying to stay calm. "You came as a man who wasn't afraid to show his true side." Victor nodded. He felt that his words could be taken as excuses, but he didn't want that. He just wanted to be honest, regardless of the consequences. "I realize you won't understand me right away," he began. "But I need you to know that I didn't mean to deceive you. When I started this whole thing, I felt like I was testing not only you, but myself. I wanted to figure out who I really am when I'm not hiding anything, when I'm not building my life on what I have. I was wrong, Anna. I was wrong in my approach." Anna listened intently without interrupting. Her heart was still cold, but she sensed sincerity in his words. He was truly sorry. He really didn't mean to hurt her. But was that enough? Could she forgive him? "I was selfish," Victor continued, his voice shaking slightly. "I wanted to test you, and I didn't think about how you would feel. I used you as an experiment, and that was my mistake. But I want you to know that I'm not playing around anymore. I'm ready to be real, ready to show you who I am, without all these masks. I want you to see me for who I am, and maybe someday you'll be able to trust me again." Anna felt her heart respond to his words. She couldn't forgive him right away, but she realized that he wasn't just a manipulator. He was a man who was also searching for something important in his life, searching for meaning in what he was doing. And maybe this was his way of facing himself, of facing who he really was. I don't know what to do," Anna said, closing her eyes so as not to show her vulnerability. "I can't forgive you right away, Victor. You hurt me. You haven't been honest with me, and that's hard to accept. But I feel like something's changed in you. You've become more real." Victor sighed, as if relieved. He realized that words couldn't bring back everything that had been lost. He knew it would be a long road for Anna, and he was willing to take it without asking for anything in return. "I'm willing to wait, no matter how long it takes," he said. "I just want you to know that I'll be there for you. I'll be honest, I'll support you in your quest. It's not just about you, it's about me too. I want to be the best person for you, even if it takes time." Anna remained silent. She felt that her thoughts and feelings were still in turmoil, But with every word he said, she began to realize that her heart was ready to take a step toward him. She couldn't leave him in the past, couldn't close that door permanently. Victor was a part of her history, and she couldn't just erase him as if he didn't exist. "I can't promise that things will be like they used to be," she said, her voice soft. "But I'm willing to try to understand you. We both have to work on ourselves, on being real to each other. And I'm going to start by giving myself a chance." Victor smiled, and it wasn't just a smile of gratitude. It was a smile of understanding that they were both on the cusp of something new. It may not have been the beginning of love, but it was a chance to start anew, without deceit or manipulation. And while they still had a long way to go, they both knew that only together could they realize what really mattered. That day, Anna and Victor began their journey to reconciliation. They didn't promise each other everything, but they did promise to be honest, open, and support each other in their search for inner truth. Although their relationship was far from perfect, they knew it was the beginning of a new phase, a phase where each could be themselves. Anna stood in front of the mirror in her small, modest apartment, her gaze absorbed in her own thoughts. Outwardly she was calm, but inside she was raging with violent emotions. Everything around her now seemed shaky and uncertain, and her inner world was like a broken bridge that she tried to rebuild, but couldn't figure out where to start. The last few weeks had been more difficult for her than ever. Two people she had once considered important had reappeared in her life, but now their presence was a source of deep doubt and fear. Victor, with whom she was beginning to forge a new path, and Leonid, who had reappeared in her life with a proposal that she thought could change her future. Anna was between two fires. Leonid, with his charisma and self-confidence, offered to help her solve her financial problems. He was ready to support her by offering her a job in his company, a guarantee of stability, but she knew it wasn't that simple with him. He was a man with whom she couldn't be sure of her feelings and intentions. His approach was too pragmatic, too calculating. He saw her as a woman who could be part of his world, part of his business, but he didn't see her as an equal partner. He offered her support, but that support hid his own interests, his own desires and ambitions. Anna knew this, but she was still tempted by the offer. After all, in a world where she was constantly facing financial hardship and uncertainty, the prospect of stability was extremely appealing. Victor, on the other hand, continued to fight for her trust. He didn't promise her an easy life, but he did promise to be there for her, to be honest and open. He wanted her to feel that she was not only a woman, but an equal partner with whom she could build something real and important. But despite his sincerity, Anna still couldn't shake off her doubts. How could she trust a man who had recently manipulated her feelings? How could one believe that his love didn't hide some other interest? Anna felt she was at a crossroads. Her eyes glistened with fatigue, and her thoughts were restless. Where should she go? Who should she be with? How not to lose herself in this maze of choices? She knew she had to make a decision that was not only reasonable, but also honest to herself. She could no longer live her life relying only on others, could no longer be part of someone else's ambitions or manipulations. She had to figure out who she was and what she wanted. But the answer wasn't so simple. When Victor came to see her again, he immediately sensed that something had changed. Anna didn't look as confident as she had before. There was something unspeakable in her eyes that made him doubt. He didn't know what exactly was troubling her, but he guessed it had to do with something they hadn't talked about. "Anna, are you okay?" he asked, stepping closer. His voice was soft, full of concern. Anna turned to him silently, her gaze heavy. "I don't know what to do, Victor," she said, lowering her head. "I don't know what I should choose. You offered me to be honest with you, but I can't live by someone else's rules anymore. I can't choose between you and what Leonid is offering me." Victor felt his heart clench. He knew that her eyes didn't have the same ease, the same trust. She was divided between him and something more material. He stepped closer to her, but stopped, not knowing what to say, how to help her. "You don't have to choose between us," he said with pain in his voice. "You have to choose what you really want. You have to decide what's important to you. You can be with us, but you have to be with yourself first. You don't have to depend on any of us. You have to be honest with yourself." Anna looked at him and tears came to her eyes. She knew Victor was telling the truth. But what was more important to her, the financial stability Leonid could give her, or the honesty and inner growth she could find with Victor? It was at this moment, when her heart was on the verge of making a decision, that Leonid unexpectedly intervened in the conversation. He appeared in the café. His strict suit and confident gait immediately attracted attention. His eyes were full of determination. "Anna, I know what you're going through, but you shouldn't keep looking for a way in the void," Leonid said, approaching the table where Anna and Victor were sitting. His voice was resolute, but there was not an ounce of urgency in it. "I can help you. I can offer you stability, and you, Victor, continue your games." Anna looked at Leonid. His words penetrated her consciousness, and she felt her inner world begin to fall apart again. Leonid had offered to help her, but his offer was again imbued with calculation, just as before. He didn't see her as an equal partner, he saw her as a means to his ends. Victor noticed how Anna tensed, how her face grew cold as Leonid spoke. He realized that she was once again faced with a choice that couldn't have been so simple. "I don't want to be part of your calculations, Leonid," Anna said, her voice firm. "I don't want my happiness to depend on your decisions. I want to be honest with myself and with those around me." Leonid didn't expect such an answer. His face changed slightly, but he didn't argue. He silently got up and walked away, leaving them alone. Now everything was clear. Anna was facing an important choice, and she was determined not to depend on other people's decisions. She had to be honest with herself, because only then could she truly trust herself and others. After Leonid left, Anna turned to Victor. "I can't make you a promise that everything will be like before," she said, "but I'm willing to try again. Not for you, not for Leonid, but for myself. For the sake of getting the real me back." Victor looked at her, and sincere gratitude appeared in his eyes. He couldn't believe that she had chosen him, that she had turned to him despite everything that had gone before. But he knew this was a fresh start for both of them. "We can go forward," he said quietly. "But only if we're both honest with ourselves and each other." Anna nodded. She felt that their future depended not on their past, not on the mistakes they had made, but on how they chose to act now. Together they began to build their future without relying on other people's expectations or losing themselves in the process. Anna and Victor started a new stage of their life, but despite all the past experiences, they decided not to force the events. They realized that their path would be long and difficult, but it would definitely be honest and real. Together, they began working on a project that was not just for them, but for others as well. It was a project that mattered, a project that could change people's lives. It was a journey that required effort, but they were ready. It all started with Victor's idea. He proposed to create a relief fund for people in difficult situations. Victor realized that his wealth and opportunities should not be used only for personal purposes. He wanted to create something more that could help others, especially those who were facing difficulties that he himself had once experienced. He realized that despite all of his successes, he was still part of a world that had its own problems and shortcomings. Anna immediately supported his idea. She knew that helping others was what she needed. It was her way to get back to herself, to restore her faith in people and in herself. Instead of depending on other people's decisions and playing by other people's rules, she decided to act according to her own values. This project became their common endeavor, and although they started small, it was the beginning of something meaningful. They spent many nights discussing the details. Anna was involved in every step, from planning the budget to organizing volunteer work. She saw how Victor, despite his past mistakes, was sincere in his intentions. He wasn't looking to benefit himself, and that gave her the opportunity to trust him again. He became her partner not only in the project but in life. Their relationship developed slowly, but it was a natural process. It was difficult in the beginning. The image of trust they tried to build proved to be fragile. Sometimes they faced the past again, with mistrust and fears, but gradually they learned to forgive and support each other. Anna was beginning to respect Victor for his efforts and the path he had traveled. He wasn't perfect, and she knew it. But the way he genuinely worked on himself, the way he showed concern for the people they worked with, couldn't help but impress her. She saw how he put the welfare of others above his own personal ambitions. This was important evidence to her that he had changed, that he was ready to take a new path. Victor, in turn, saw Anna changing. She was becoming stronger, more confident, and he was proud to be a part of her life. He knew he had to support her without intruding on her space, but he was always there for her when she needed him. He learned to appreciate her not only as a partner, but as a person who had her independence, her strength, and her truth. The process of change was slow, but each new accomplishment became a step forward. Their project began to yield results. Every day there were more and more people who needed help. Instead of just looking at their needs and sorrows, Anna and Victor began to act. They organized fundraisers, distributed funds, trained volunteers, and created programs that helped people not just survive, but start new lives. It was not just charity, it was an investment in the future, a real help to those who could not help themselves. But it wasn't just the project itself that was important. Their relationship grew stronger every day. They began to respect each other for their efforts, for their honesty and sincerity. They were no longer hiding behind masks, no longer trying to be someone else. Anna and Victor became true partners, not only in business, but also in life. Over time, they began to realize that the most important thing was not what they did, but how they did it. Sincerity and trust became the foundation of their relationship. In the beginning, they were afraid that they would not be able to regain what they had lost. But with each passing day, they became more and more convinced that they didn't need to. What mattered was that they moved together, that they became part of something bigger than their own fears and doubts. The day came when Anna and Victor sat on the veranda of their new home, discussing the results of their work. The evening sun was touching the horizon, and the warm breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers. Victor turned to Anna and took her hand. "We did it," he said with a smile. "We built something that mattered." Anna looked up at him. She could feel her heart beating steady and calm. She was there for him, and that was what mattered. They had been through so much, and now they were here, together. "We'll do a lot more," she replied, smiling back. "But the most important thing I realized is that our lives depend on what we do, not on what happened before. We can build a new future if we are honest and true to ourselves." Victor nodded. He knew that their future would not be easy, that they would face new difficulties, but now he was not afraid. He knew that with Anna they could get through anything. Their relationship grew stronger because they realized that true happiness and success required not only trust, but a willingness to walk a path that required strength and honesty. "Are you ready to move on?" he asked her. Anna looked at him and felt her heart fill with peace. She was ready. "Yes, I am ready," she replied. "And I believe in us." They sat like that for a long time, enjoying the silence and the fact that they were there for each other. It was the moment they began a new life, a life of honesty, respect, and trust. A life where they could not only be happy, but also help others find their way. And although this journey was just beginning, they knew that now they could move forward, hand in hand, in a world where true love and trust could overcome any obstacle.